He was a man of immense wealth and influence. Every step he took seemed calculated, every decision carefully measured. His life was a series of routines that no ordinary person could imagine. From the luxurious office towers to the sprawling mansion he called home, he had everything that money could buy. Yet behind the polished exterior, he was distant, reserved, and often cold to those around him. The mansion was grand, with rooms that stretched endlessly and halls that echoed with silence. Staff moved quietly through its corridors, always alert, always careful not to draw attention. Among them was a young woman who had been part of the household for several years. She was not flashy or loud. She worked quietly with dedication and had a way of blending into the background, performing her duties without complaint. Her life was simple, yet it carried a weight that few could see. Every morning she would arrive before the sun had fully risen, moving through the kitchen, making sure everything was in order. She prepared breakfast for the household, cleaned the rooms, and arranged the details of the day with quiet precision. Despite the hard work, she never showed resentment. There was pride in her work, a sense of responsibility that kept her moving forward no matter the challenges. The billionaire noticed her, of course, but rarely spoke to her beyond instructions. He appreciated her efficiency but kept an emotional distance. He was used to controlling every aspect of his life and expected the same from everyone else. The young woman, however, saw the man behind the wealth. She saw the loneliness hidden in his eyes, the pressure he carried even when he smiled politely. She knew she could never share these thoughts aloud, yet she quietly observed, understanding the man in ways others did not. One day, as the morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the mansion, the young woman moved about her work with her usual diligence. She had learned to anticipate the billionaire's needs, knowing exactly when he preferred his coffee, how he liked the morning papers arranged, and even the way he walked from one room to another. She moved like a shadow, careful not to disturb yet present in every essential moment of the household. The billionaire entered the kitchen, his presence commanding attention, even without words. She offered a polite nod and he acknowledged it with a curt glance. He poured his coffee in silence, his mind already preoccupied with the day ahead. Meetings, decisions, and investments filled his thoughts. Yet the quiet rhythm of the household allowed him a brief moment of calm before the storm of his responsibilities. She continued her work, arranging breakfast and cleaning up the details of the room. There was a certain satisfaction in maintaining order, in knowing that the household ran smoothly because of her efforts. The mansion was a world of wealth and luxury, but for her it was also a place of endless labor, where her diligence was the foundation of daily life. Despite the demanding environment, she found moments of reflection. In the quiet corners of the mansion, she would pause, thinking about her life, her dreams, and the challenges she faced. She knew her place in this world was defined by her work, but she also knew that within her heart, she carried hope and resilience. These thoughts sustained her through the long hours, giving her the strength to continue. The billionaire, meanwhile, was absorbed in his own world. He had grown accustomed to his routine, relying on the precision of his staff to manage the details he deemed insignificant. Yet, in moments of rare observation, he could not help but notice her. Her efficiency, her calm demeanor, and the quiet way she handled her responsibilities stood out. He did not understand it fully, but there was something about her presence that seemed essential to the smooth functioning of his life. One afternoon, the billionaire had a brief moment of frustration. A meeting had gone poorly, and he returned to the mansion with a heavy expression. She noticed immediately, stepping lightly to avoid drawing attention. She prepared his preferred tea and placed it on the table, ensuring that everything was exactly as he liked. He glanced at her without speaking, yet in that glance there was a fleeting acknowledgement of her thoughtfulness. It was a subtle moment, almost imperceptible, yet it lingered. She continued her work, moving through the rooms with precision, yet a small part of her felt seen. She knew better than to expect any more than that, but it was enough for her to feel a quiet sense of connection, even in the distance imposed by his world. Days passed, and the routine continued. The mansion remained a place of silent efficiency, with the young woman ensuring that every detail was attended to. The billionaire remained absorbed in his empire, yet the small moments of interaction with her were quietly shaping an understanding he did not fully recognize. There was an invisible thread connecting them, woven through routine observation and the unspoken acknowledgement of each other's presence. One evening, as the mansion settled into the quiet of night, she paused in the grand hallway. The chandeliers reflected soft light on the polished floors, and the air carried the faint scent of flowers from the main garden. She allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, to reflect on the day, and to wonder about the life that awaited beyond the walls of the mansion. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps, and she quickly returned to her duties. Careful not to be seen, the billionaire moved through the hall, deep in thought, unaware of the quiet observation that followed him. He was a man of power, yet even he could not escape the subtleties of human connection. There were moments in his life that could not be controlled, that revealed the unexpected patterns of emotion and responsibility. He did not yet understand the significance, but the seeds of change were being quietly sown. As the night deepened, the young woman completed her work, ensuring that the household was prepared for the next day. She moved with care, performing tasks that were unnoticed yet crucial. In the stillness, she allowed herself a small smile, acknowledging the satisfaction of work well done. The mansion was a world of wealth and control, but within it, she had carved a space of her own, a place where dedication and resilience could quietly shine. Meanwhile, the billionaire retired to his study, reflecting on the day and the minor frustrations that had colored it. He did not speak of it aloud, yet there was an unconscious awareness of the young woman's presence in his life. Her efficiency, her calm, and the subtle way she maintained the household had begun to occupy his thoughts more than he expected. There was a complexity in her presence that went beyond work, a human element that even his wealth and power could not fully command. The night passed with a quiet rhythm. The mansion was a place of silence and luxury, yet within its walls human stories unfolded in ways that were often unseen. The young woman's dedication and the billionaire's distant observation formed an intricate dance, a pattern of unspoken acknowledgement and subtle influence. Each day built upon the last, creating a tension and a connection that neither fully understood. As dawn approached, the first light of morning began to filter through the tall windows once again. The young woman prepared for another day, moving through her duties with the same quiet diligence that had defined her life in the mansion. The billionaire awoke, already absorbed in plans, decisions, and responsibilities. Yet in the background of his mind there was a faint awareness, a recognition of the presence that had become quietly essential to the rhythm of his world. It was a beginning that seemed ordinary on the surface, yet beneath it lay the foundations of a story that would unfold in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The mansion, the wealth, and the routines were merely the stage. The true narrative was in the human connections, the quiet observations, and the subtle acknowledgments that shaped their lives in unseen but powerful ways. The story was only just beginning, and the first threads of fate had quietly taken hold. The days passed quietly in the mansion, yet for the young woman, a storm was quietly growing inside. She had been feeling different for weeks, a change she could no longer ignore. At first, she hoped it was nothing, just fatigue from long hours of work and constant movement. But as the days went by, she could no longer deny it. She was expecting a child. The news filled her with a mix of fear and uncertainty, emotions she had never felt so strongly before. She thought about what this would mean for her life. The mansion, the wealthy man she worked for, and the carefully structured world she had been part of suddenly felt fragile. She feared judgment, punishment, or even losing her position. Her mind raced with questions. How would she tell him? Would he care? Would he believe her? The weight of these thoughts pressed heavily on her shoulders. For nights she could hardly sleep, tossing and turning as her mind wandered through every possible scenario. She knew the billionaire was not known for his warmth or patience. He was a man of power and control, used to having things his way. Telling him about the child seemed almost impossible. Yet she knew that secrecy was not an option. Eventually he would know. The question was how and when. One morning she decided it was time. She carefully prepared herself and went to the study where he spent most of his mornings. Her hands trembled slightly as she knocked on the door. He looked up from the papers he was reviewing, his sharp eyes scanning her face. He could sense something was different immediately. She took a deep breath and spoke softly, barely above a whisper. She told him about the child, her voice shaking with emotion. The room fell silent. He leaned back in his chair, staring at her as if trying to process the information. His mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and confusion. He could not understand how this had happened, and his initial reaction was denial. He asked her questions, his tone cold and sharp. Who, how, when? Each question felt like a hammer to her chest. She answered honestly, without embellishment, hoping that the truth would somehow make a difference. But it did not. His eyes hardened, and he made it clear that he did not want to accept responsibility. He said that such matters were complicated and that she should take care of it herself. He warned her to be discreet, to avoid scandal, and to not involve anyone else. The words were harsh yet precise, and they left her feeling small and powerless. She left the room feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. She knew that she could not rely on him for support, but she also knew that she could not give up. The life growing inside her was real, and she would protect it no matter what. She returned to her duties with a quiet resolve, hiding her fear behind a calm and composed exterior. No one in the household could guess the turmoil she carried within. Outside the mansion, she sought advice from a trusted friend. This person had known her for years and offered comfort, guidance, and reassurance. They reminded her of her strength, of her ability to navigate difficult circumstances. They discussed options, practical matters, and emotional support. The conversations helped her feel less isolated, though the shadow of the billionaire's denial still loomed over her. As the weeks passed, her body began to change. She adjusted her daily routines to accommodate the physical demands of pregnancy, all while maintaining the same level of diligence at work. She moved carefully through the mansion, never allowing fatigue or discomfort to show. She organized her schedule meticulously, making sure that every task was completed as expected. Even as her world shifted, she maintained the appearance of stability. The billionaire noticed slight changes in her demeanor, but chose not to ask. He was a man who preferred control and certainty, and he could not imagine himself in a situation without control. He continued his routines, unaware of the emotional battles she fought each day. Yet there were moments when he caught glimpses of her resilience, of the quiet strength she carried without complaint. These moments were brief and fleeting, but they did not go entirely unnoticed. Her interactions with him became a careful dance. She avoided confrontation, focused on her duties, and maintained professionalism at all times. Yet beneath the surface, emotions swirled. Fear, anger, hope, and sadness mixed together, creating a complex web of feelings that only she fully understood. She found solace in small victories, moments when she could smile at her own strength or take a brief pause to acknowledge her unborn child. As the pregnancy progressed, she began to prepare for the future. She read books, sought advice from healthcare professionals, and considered the practicalities of life as a single mother. She thought about the support she would need, the challenges ahead, and the joys that might come despite the difficulties. Every step was measured, every decision deliberate as she navigated the uncertain path before her. The billionaire, meanwhile, continued his life of meetings, deals, and business decisions. He remained unaware of the depth of her preparation or the reality of the life growing inside her. His focus was on control, on maintaining his empire, and on keeping appearances. Yet, there were rare moments when he observed her closely, noticing the subtle changes in her appearance or the way she carried herself. These observations did not yet translate into understanding, but they planted seeds of curiosity that would grow over time. Despite the tension, she found moments of quiet joy. She would imagine the child's face, dream of the future, and feel a sense of connection that no denial or fear could diminish. These private moments gave her strength, reminding her that life could continue even in the face of adversity. She found comfort in small rituals, preparing meals carefully, organizing the household with care, and taking a few quiet moments for herself when possible. One afternoon, she faced a particularly difficult day. The billionaire had been unusually harsh, his temper sharp, and his demands relentless. She had barely slept the night before, worried and anxious about her situation. Yet she completed every task, moved through the house with grace, and met every expectation. By evening, she was exhausted, but there was a quiet pride in knowing that she had endured without faltering. As night fell, she reflected on the events of the day. The mansion was silent, and the only sounds were the faint rustling of leaves outside and the distant hum of the city. She allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, acknowledging the pain and fear that she carried. Yet even in that moment she felt determination and hope. The child growing inside her was a source of strength, a reason to continue despite the challenges. The billionaire retired to his study, reviewing documents and plans for the next day. He remained unaware of the emotional and practical preparations she had made, yet he could not entirely ignore her presence. There was something in her resilience, a quiet strength that he could sense but not understand. He remained distant, yet in rare moments a flicker of curiosity or concern would cross his mind. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The young woman continued her work with the same dedication, navigating the complexities of pregnancy while maintaining her role in the household. She moved with care, spoke with precision, and managed her responsibilities with unwavering focus. The mansion remained a place of luxury and control, but for her it was also a place of survival, adaptation, and quiet courage. As she looked forward, she considered the challenges ahead. She knew the path would be difficult, filled with uncertainty, judgment, and obstacles. Yet she also knew that she had the strength to face these challenges. Her life had been shaped by perseverance, careful planning, and an unwavering sense of responsibility. She would not allow fear or denial to dictate the course of her future. Through it all, there was an unspoken connection between her and the billionaire. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it existed. He noticed her efficiency, her calm under pressure, and the subtle signs of change in her life. He did not fully understand it, nor did he act upon it, but there was a presence, a tension, and a story unfolding that neither of them could yet predict. The young woman moved forward with determination, preparing for a future that was uncertain, yet filled with possibility. She faced each day with quiet courage, navigating the complexities of her situation with intelligence and resilience. The mansion, the billionaire, and the world outside were part of the backdrop to her story, but she was the one who shaped the path ahead. The stage was set for events that would challenge, transform, and ultimately reveal the true strength of her spirit. The day finally arrived when her world changed in the most profound way. She felt a mix of fear, anticipation, and determination as she prepared for the birth of her child. Her body had been through months of transformation, and now she faced the moment that would define the next chapter of her life. She knew she would be alone in this, as the billionaire had made it clear he would not be involved. Yet she felt a quiet courage growing inside her, fueled by the life she carried. The birth was not easy. She faced the pain and uncertainty with a strength she had not fully recognized in herself until now. Each contraction, each moment of struggle tested her resolve, yet she continued with a quiet determination. She imagined the future, the child she would hold in her arms, and the love that would guide them both through the days to come. Those thoughts gave her strength to endure the most difficult moments. Finally, after hours of effort, she held her child for the first time. The baby's small body was delicate yet full of life and energy. She felt a wave of love and protection that washed over her entirely. The tiny hands, the soft breathing, and the innocent eyes created a bond that was immediate and unbreakable. She whispered promises to the child, vows that she would do everything in her power to protect and nurture them, no matter the obstacles. The initial days were filled with exhaustion, yet they were also filled with moments of pure joy. She learned the rhythms of the baby's needs, the subtle signals that indicated hunger, discomfort, or the need for comfort. Her life became a cycle of care and attention, a dance of patience and love. Even in the quiet, sleepless nights, she felt a profound sense of purpose that anchored her spirit. She faced challenges she had never imagined. Managing daily life while caring for a newborn demanded every ounce of strength and focus she had. She had to navigate not only the physical demands but also the emotional weight of raising a child alone. Each day was a test of resilience, yet she met it with determination, understanding that the child's well-being depended on her steadfastness. The mansion remained the backdrop to her life, yet it had changed for her entirely. The opulent halls and luxurious rooms no longer represented just wealth and control. They became spaces where she navigated her new reality. She moved carefully, avoiding the billionaire whenever possible, performing her duties with precision yet always aware of the presence of her child. She created a world within the mansion where love, care, and protection were her guiding principles. Despite his previous denial, The billionaire occasionally heard whispers about the child. Staff members spoke cautiously, careful not to provoke conflict or scandal. He dismissed much of it at first, unwilling to accept a situation that challenged his control and pride. Yet in rare moments a flicker of curiosity would cross his mind. He could not fully ignore the whispers, nor could he completely dismiss the idea of the child's existence. It was an inconvenient truth, one that forced him to confront emotions he had long avoided. The young woman continued her quiet routine, balancing care for the baby with her household responsibilities. She was meticulous in her planning, ensuring that every aspect of life was managed with care. She adjusted her schedule to accommodate feeding times, naps, and medical appointments. Each day demanded adaptability and patience, yet she found joy in the small victories. A smile from the child, a peaceful nap, a moment of calm in the midst of chaos. She also began to reflect on her own growth. The experience had changed her, revealing a strength and resilience she had not fully recognized before. She understood the value of patience, the importance of preparation, and the depth of love that a mother could hold. These lessons shaped her perspective, giving her confidence that she could face any challenges that lay ahead. The child itself became a source of wonder and fascination. Even in the early days, there was something striking about the baby's eyes, a depth and intelligence that seemed to look beyond the surface. The young woman found herself captivated, drawn into the child's presence in a way that transcended the physical. Each glance, each expression was a reminder of the unique life she had created and the bond they shared. As weeks passed, she adjusted to the new rhythms of motherhood. The early fear and uncertainty began to give way to confidence and determination. She learned to trust her instincts, to respond to the child's needs with care and understanding. She developed strategies for managing her workload while maintaining the baby's comfort and security. Every challenge she overcame reinforced her sense of capability and resilience. The mansion, once a place of routine and strict hierarchy, became a stage for her quiet mastery. She moved through the rooms with a sense of purpose, balancing the responsibilities of care and work with skill and efficiency. The staff continued their duties, observing her composure and strength, perhaps without fully understanding the magnitude of her efforts. She maintained a sense of dignity and calm, navigating a world that could easily have overwhelmed her. Even though the billionaire remained distant, there were moments when she felt the subtle impact of his presence. His decisions and routines influenced her life indirectly, shaping the environment in which she raised her child. She observed him from a careful distance, noting patterns and anticipating his expectations. She adapted, not out of submission but as a practical necessity in navigating her surroundings. Her life became a delicate balance of care, vigilance, and adaptation. She learned to manage both her emotional needs and the practical realities of motherhood. She found ways to create small moments of joy, celebrations of life and love that sustained her spirit. Every day was a testament to her resilience, a demonstration of the strength that arose from love and responsibility. The child continued to grow, revealing personality traits that amazed and delighted her. Moments of laughter, curiosity, and wonder filled their days. She cherished these experiences, understanding that the bond they shared was unique and irreplaceable. The baby's presence became a source of motivation and inspiration, reinforcing her determination to provide a secure and loving environment. Despite her isolation, she built a support network outside the mansion. Trusted friends and family provided guidance, encouragement, and assistance when needed. These connections reminded her that she was not entirely alone, and that community could provide strength even in the most challenging circumstances. She drew from this support, balancing independence with practical collaboration. As the child's features became more distinct, she noticed striking similarities that caused her to pause. There was an expression in the eyes, a certain depth that seemed familiar, though she did not fully understand why. It created a subtle tension in her thoughts, a question that lingered without answer. She focused on the practical aspects of care, yet the curiosity could not be entirely dismissed. The mansion continued to operate under its usual rhythms, the billionaire absorbed in his work, unaware of the quiet, transformative life unfolding within its walls. She navigated her responsibilities with skill and care, managing both the household and her child's needs with precision. The world outside remained distant, yet it pressed in with occasional reminders of societal expectations, judgment, and practical challenges. Through it all, she maintained hope. Hope for a stable future, hope for recognition and understanding, hope for a life where her child could thrive. These thoughts sustained her, giving her the resilience to face the long days and sleepless nights. She understood that her journey was not just about survival, but about shaping a meaningful and secure life for both herself and the child. The mansion, the billionaire, and the staff became part of a complex landscape in which she navigated her new life. Every action, every decision was guided by care and responsibility. She had grown into a role she had not anticipated, yet she embraced it fully, understanding the depth of strength and courage it required. Each day was a challenge, but it was also a testament to her love, determination, and resilience. The story of her life, and that of her child, was unfolding in quiet, deliberate ways. The days were filled with small victories, careful planning, and emotional growth. Even in the absence of acknowledgement or support from the billionaire, she cultivated a world of care, attention, and love that defined her new reality. The journey was only beginning, yet she faced it with courage, hope, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Life continued in its careful rhythm within the mansion, but the arrival of the child had brought a quiet tension that could not be ignored. The young woman had settled into a routine, balancing her responsibilities with motherhood, yet there were moments when she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing in. She knew the billionaire had denied any connection, but there were whispers, subtle acknowledgments from the staff, and occasional fleeting glances that hinted at the impossibility of complete ignorance. It happened on an afternoon that began like any other. The sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the polished floors. She was attending to the child, rocking the baby gently and humming softly, when a message arrived that the billionaire would be passing through the house for an unexpected meeting. She stiffened slightly, knowing that this meant he would be nearby, and perhaps close enough to see her and the child together. Her heart raced as she carefully moved through the rooms, making sure everything was orderly. She knew she could not avoid him entirely, and she could not hide the child indefinitely. Yet she felt a nervous tension, a fear of confrontation that had grown since the day she revealed the pregnancy. She adjusted the child in her arms, smoothing the small blanket, and prepared herself for the moment of encounter. He entered the room with his usual presence, commanding attention without a word. The child stirred, sensing the movement, and she instinctively held the baby closer. She looked up at him briefly, noticing a flicker in his eyes, something she had not seen before. It was not recognition, not yet, but it was curiosity, a pause in the usual indifference that defined his interactions. She braced herself, unsure how he would react. For a moment there was silence. The child looked up at him, small hands stretching slightly, eyes wide and innocent. Something shifted in that instant. There was an unmistakable spark, a depth in the gaze that seemed to reach beyond appearances. The billionaire's expression softened, just a fraction, yet enough to betray an emotional response he had not intended to reveal. He blinked, almost as if startled, and the world seemed to hold its breath. She watched him closely, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. The child's eyes were clear, bright, and strangely familiar, and she realized that this moment was significant. The billionaire, for all his power and control, was confronted by something he could not manage with authority or force. The connection between father and child, whether recognized or not, had made itself known. He spoke finally, his voice measured but quieter than usual. He asked questions not with anger but with cautious curiosity. Who was the child with? How had things been managed? Each question revealed a tension, a struggle between pride and the emerging realization that the child might indeed be connected to him. He looked at her, then at the child, and for the first time the mask of control wavered. She answered carefully, her voice steady but calm. She explained the child's needs, the care she had provided, and the quiet life they had built together within the mansion's walls. There was no accusation, no demand, only facts presented with clarity and sincerity. She held herself with quiet dignity, aware that her composure was part of the story she was telling, part of the strength she had cultivated over months of isolation and care. The billionaire observed silently, his mind processing the information with an intensity that betrayed his usual calm exterior. He had never faced a situation like this, where wealth and control were rendered irrelevant by something as simple and powerful as a child's presence. The eyes of the baby, The undeniable innocence and the natural connection forced him to confront emotions he had long suppressed. Anger, pride, confusion, and something deeper, perhaps recognition, flickered across his expression. She noticed subtle changes in him, the way his gaze lingered, the almost imperceptible shift in posture, and the softening of his expression. There was a moment when he leaned slightly forward as if drawn to the child, yet unsure how to bridge the distance. The child, sensing the attention, reached out with tiny hands exploring the space, unaware of the complexities of adult relationships, yet instinctively engaging with the connection forming before them. For the young woman, this encounter was both frightening and revealing. She had long prepared herself for rejection, for continued denial, yet here was a moment that hinted at something different. She remained cautious, keeping her emotions in check, but she allowed herself to notice the subtle shift in his demeanor. It was a beginning, fragile yet undeniable, a moment where the path ahead might change in ways she had not dared to imagine. Days passed, and the encounter remained vivid in both of their minds. She continued her careful routine, balancing the child's needs with her household responsibilities, but there was a new awareness. Every glance from the billionaire, every indirect acknowledgement carried a weight she had not seen before. She did not push, did not seek more than what was given, but she noticed the gradual change in the air, the subtle opening of possibilities. He, meanwhile, struggled internally. He had faced facts he could not deny and emotions he had long avoided. The child's presence challenged his sense of control, pride, and identity, forcing him to reckon with responsibilities he had previously rejected. The recognition of connection, though still unspoken, had created a shift, a crack in the wall of indifference he had carefully constructed. He began to observe more closely, consider more carefully, and allow thoughts he had previously dismissed to take shape. The young woman sensed this shift subtly. She noticed the moments when he lingered longer in a room, the times when his attention seemed inadvertently drawn to the child, and the small, unintentional gestures that hinted at curiosity or concern. She did not push for acknowledgement or demand change, yet she allowed herself to feel the possibility of something more, a cautious hope that the situation might evolve into understanding and connection. Outside the mansion, the world continued, but within its walls, life had grown more complex. The child thrived, showing remarkable intelligence, curiosity, and warmth. Every interaction, every moment of growth was a testament to the care, love, and attention provided by the young woman. She marveled at the child's progress, aware that each milestone was not just physical or emotional, but also a subtle bridge forming between the child and the distant father. The billionaire began to witness more directly the unique qualities of the child. In moments of observation, he noticed expressions, gestures, and behaviors that were strikingly familiar. The child's eyes in particular seemed to hold a depth that resonated with something within him. He found himself lingering longer than usual in rooms where the child was present, watching quietly, sometimes forgetting the routines and tasks that otherwise dominated his life. The young woman watched these changes carefully, always mindful of boundaries and the delicate balance she maintained. She understood the fragile nature of this awakening, knowing that any misstep could provoke denial or retreat. Yet she also recognized the opportunity for connection, the possibility that the bond forming silently could grow into recognition, understanding, and perhaps reconciliation. There were small gestures, moments that seemed insignificant yet carried weight. A shared glance, a soft smile, a fleeting touch as he reached instinctively toward the child. These moments were unspoken but meaningful, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that had always existed but had been ignored or denied. The young woman noted each one carefully, aware that these moments were laying the foundation for future change. As weeks turned into months, the billionaire began to confront his feelings more openly, though still cautiously. He reflected on the nature of responsibility, on the bond forming with the child, and on the impact of his previous denial. He did not yet act openly, but he began to consider ways to acknowledge, support, and understand the life that had grown within the mansion's walls under the young woman's care. The child continued to grow, revealing personality traits that were both charming and striking. Intelligence, curiosity, and an unusual depth in the eyes made the child unforgettable. Each interaction with the billionaire carried the potential to change the dynamics of their relationship, to transform denial into recognition, distance into connection. The young woman continued to guide these encounters carefully, nurturing both the child and the subtle growth of understanding in the father. Life in the mansion remained structured, yet beneath the surface a quiet transformation was occurring. The young woman's resilience, love, and careful planning had created a stable and nurturing environment. The billionaire, confronted by undeniable emotion and connection, began to reconsider his previous stance. He observed, reflected, and allowed himself to feel in ways he had long avoided. The child, innocent and unassuming, was the catalyst for change. The stage was set for a series of choices that would shape the future. The young woman, confident in her care and judgment, prepared for whatever came next. The billionaire, grappling with unfamiliar emotions and responsibilities, faced the possibility of transformation. And the child, at the center of this unfolding story, continued to grow, unaware yet deeply influential, holding in their gaze the power to awaken recognition, love, and connection that had long been denied. The days that followed the first encounter were filled with tension and quiet anticipation. The young woman continued her careful routine, tending to the child, keeping the household in order, and observing the subtle changes in the billionaire. She had learned patience over the months, and now that patience was tested in new ways, she knew that change was possible. But it would not come quickly or easily. It required awareness, honesty, and courage from a man who had long relied on control and pride. He found himself returning to the rooms where the child was present more often. Sometimes it was curiosity, sometimes unconscious longing, but the effect was undeniable. Each glance, each fleeting smile from the child, pulled at something deep within him. He saw innocence, intelligence, and life in ways he had rarely allowed himself to notice. It was disarming, forcing him to reconsider his previous indifference and to confront emotions that had long been hidden beneath layers of power and routine. The young woman watched him carefully, noting the gradual changes. There was no rush, no demand, only the silent observation of shifts in attitude, subtle moments of concern, and growing acknowledgement. She allowed space for him to navigate his emotions without pressure, understanding that recognition and acceptance could not be forced. Her strength lay in her patience, her resilience, and her unwavering care for the child. One afternoon, the billionaire found himself in the nursery, drawn by the laughter of the child. The young woman was present, watching with cautious expectation. The child reached toward him instinctively, and something shifted in that instant. He bent slightly, allowing the small hands to touch his own, and for the first time he smiled genuinely, without restraint or pretense. It was a smile that carried warmth, acknowledgement, and the beginnings of connection. The young woman felt a cautious relief. This moment, seemingly small, was a turning point. It represented the opening of a door that had been closed by denial, pride, and fear. The billionaire's acknowledgement of the child, even in this simple gesture, created the foundation for understanding and reconciliation. She continued her work, mindful of the balance between care, observation, and allowing the natural progression of events. Over the following weeks, interactions became more frequent and less formal. The billionaire began to engage with the child, asking questions about their needs, observing behaviors, and even participating in small activities. These moments were tentative, yet they carried significance. Each smile, each gentle gesture, and each moment of attention deepened the connection between father and child, slowly transforming denial into recognition and distance into closeness. The young woman noticed these changes with a mixture of caution and hope. She remained protective, understanding the fragility of new bonds and the necessity of gradual trust, yet she allowed herself to feel a growing sense of relief and optimism. The child was receiving attention, the billionaire was beginning to change, and the possibility of a more harmonious household emerged. The billionaire's transformation was subtle but profound. He began to reflect on his previous actions, recognizing the I